In this video, we'll give an overview of the color
and direction of light.
Second, color or frequency. There's a sort of default photographic scale that goes from typically 3,200 degrees Kelvin. I'm not going to get into that right now, to 5,600 degrees Kelvin. That's what photographers 3,200 would call incandescent, and 5,600 daylight. And daylight's on the bluer end and 3,200's on the yellower end of the scale. That's one of those things where your eye just adjusts. You don't even know it's happening. It's hard to perceive that there's a difference in color, but the camera doesn't know that. So with the camera, you can hit a white balance button and it takes and adjust. If you point it at something white, it adjusts the relative color and says, okay, now I know what everything should look like because I know what this white looks like. It adjusts for the color of the light. But you've got a scale all the way down from candlelight, which is very orange in color, to night light, moonlight, which is really, really cool in color, really on the blue end of the scale. So a lot of these lights have a dial on them, like this one, that will, and they call them bicolor, that will go from cool, which is what I have it on now, to warm. So that's tungsten, and that's daylight, and that's pretty common because those are the things you commonly run across. There's another scale that you see sometimes between green and magenta that they'll sometimes call tint. And the reason for that, fluorescent lighting typically fell in between around 4,000 K. And for a lot of years, fluorescent lighting wasn't very usable in photography because it did not produce all of the frequencies of light, and you couldn't get good color rendition out of it. If you looked at a chart of the different frequencies or colors of light, there were holes in it. And so certain colors just couldn't be represented fairly, accurately. And there was a big spike in the green, for instance. So that magenta green adjustment was there to compensate for that. So sometimes you'll see that, even on lighting instruments, you'll see that. And then the other control you'll occasionally get is an RGB, which can make any color under the sun. So if you want to make, a bright purple for whatever, just for as an effect. And they're not as common to have RGB lights, but there are a lot of RGB lights. This is a scene that has a bunch of different color lights in it. And I'm going to toggle over to Lightroom here. You've got light from the sky that's very blue in here. You got light from headlights that's very on the orange end, on the, low end of the spectrum. You've got these arc light street lights that are kind of an orange. They don't even put out white light. You get those kind of green lights up on the building. So it's all over the map. With a camera, you can white balance. So you could just say, I want the blue light to be normal and I want this all to look, just normal. And you can just white balance on the blue. So I can go to the road and say, I'm just going to make the road look normal, and there. Now the road doesn't really look colored, it looks normal. But, it affects everything else too, right? So, and you can do that all day long, but you end up with a kind of a compromise. Whatever you white balance on changes everything else. So you can get some things that look really great and some things that look really weird. And so when you're lighting something, you be aware of the color of the sources that are there already. It's the most typical thing is you go into a situation that already has a bunch of tungsten lights, and your default position oftentimes is that you're going to put your lights on tungsten, so you don't have blue light coming in on one side of their face and tungsten light coming in on the other side of their face. You might want that, but most of the time you don't. But you can use it to effect, but to be aware of it and control it is what you really want. So the next parameter of lighting is direction. Where's the light coming from? In this photo, the source of light is just sunlight. There isn't anything else, I don't think. And it's mostly coming from over there. You can tell by the highlight. But most of what you see is lit by just the ambient, light coming off the clouds and everything. It's flat, even, soft, It's just a very even, soft kind of thing. And the light, the primary direction is straight on from the direction of the camera. Here you've got light coming primarily from back behind the subject, You've got lights coming from back in the corners, hitting the edges of the glass and stuff, and it's reflecting off, And this is an example of a motivation, which we're not talking about right now, but you get these little highlights that are really pretty so that they don't just look unrealistic, especially with a person's face. You see a highlight and it might just look like, not realistic, but you put something back there like the candles and your brain kind of says, oh, the candles are making that highlight, which they aren't really. There's a light back there, but that's motivation. That motivates the reason why there's a highlight there. But you've got like a bluish light wrapping around here and a yellower light wrapping around there. So there's some orange lights way in the background here, right? So the lights are coming in from different directions to create highlights and reflections. Here you've got light hitting the front of somebody's face, but they're not facing the camera, so it's a side light from the perspective of the camera, and that creates a little more of a contrasty look. And this is a real contrasty look, both in color. So this, you don't have a lot of front light at all here, It's all coming from behind. And you can tell because of the way it's reflecting off, like you look at his nose, the lights are back coming out toward you. And you've got a lot of shading, up in here. So, and then of course this light is all the way behind him. And when you do that, you get these sharp edges, and that's an interesting look, And then of course, just for effect, we're shooting right into the light and creating a lens flare. And here we got light coming through a window, and that's creating the illusion of sunlight, which you would get in a kitchen, presumably. And then there are other lights, you've got overhead lights, you can see shadows down here. We've got some supplementary lights to light their faces. So there's a variety of sources there. But, hopefully you can see these are creating a little bit different kind of feelings and moods in the shots. And the direction is part of that.
Click on the next video to continue. New videos drop every couple of days. If you like what you see, like and follow us on our social media channels. And everything is downloadable for free on our website, rucciproductions.com.